The hum of Melissa Collins' old washing machine filled the small apartment, a steady rhythm against the chatter of the evening news playing on the TV. She sat cross-legged on the carpet, folding laundry into neat stacks, her tired hands moving automatically through Jack's superhero socks and Diana's space-themed pajamas. The twins had finally gone to bed after their usual negotiations for just 5 more minutes, and for a moment she enjoyed the silence that came only after bedtime. Her peace shattered with the anchor's next words. Our top story tonight: a fire has severely damaged Lake Crest Manor, the historic cliffside estate overlooking Millbrook Bay. Melissa froze. One of Jack's socks slipped from her fingers, falling to the carpet. On the screen, orange flames devoured the silhouette of a mansion she knew well, even if only through someone else's stories. Vivien Lake's house, the glamorous Golden Age actress who had once reigned on cinema screens, and who, not so long ago, Melissa had sat beside in the quiet hours of hospice care. Memories washed over her. Vivian's sharp eyes, her thin but steady voice as she spoke of Hollywood in its prime, of the roles she had won and the ones stolen from her. "Don't let people write your ending, Melissa," she had once whispered. "Write it yourself." Melissa pressed a trembling hand to her lips. Vivien had been gone barely 3 weeks, yet here was her home, ablaze, ruined. A knock startled her. It was too late for neighbors, too formal for friends. Through the peephole, she saw a woman in a dark suit, holding a thick manila envelope. "Melissa Collins?" the woman asked when the door opened a cautious crack. "I'm Sandra Patel from Williams Finch. May I come in?" Melissa's throat tightened. She verified the woman's credentials, signed a form with hands that barely held steady, and accepted the envelope as if it were a live thing. Sandra offered brief condolences and left, her heels clicking down the hall, leaving Melissa alone beneath the flickering kitchen light. She sat down at the table, staring at the heavy stationery inside. The letter bore an elegant crest: James Williams, Attorney at Law. Her eyes raced across the words, her pulse quickening with every line. "It is my solemn duty to inform you of the passing of Ms. Vivien Lake. Pursuant to her final will and testament, the property known as Lake Crest Manor, including its contents and grounds, has been bequeathed to you under specific conditions outlined in the trust documents enclosed." Melissa's hands shook. Beneath the letter lay a sealed envelope with her name written in Vivien's unmistakable script. She opened it carefully. "Melissa, you listened. In a world full of noise, that's rarer than you know. Lake Crest needs someone who knows how to listen. The house has stories to tell. My children never could. Perhaps you will. Vivien." Her breath caught. In her hands lay the deed to Lake Crest Manor, the same house she had just watched burning on the evening news. "Mom?" a small voice whispered. Diana, her daughter, stood in the hallway, rubbing her eyes. Behind her, Jack peeked out, protective as ever. "Why are you crying?" Diana asked. Melissa gathered them close, tears streaming freely now. "Because," she whispered, staring at the papers spread across the table, "someone I once cared for just gave us something. Something very big." She pulled them tighter, whispering the words as much to herself as to them. "She chose us." The morning sun sparkled off the waters of Millbrook Bay as Melissa's old Honda climbed the winding coastal road. The children were at school, at least she thought they were, and the passenger seat beside her was piled with paperwork she had barely slept trying to make sense of. Somewhere between disbelief and dread, she kept asking herself the same question: why me? When the trees parted, the mansion came into view. Lake Crest. Even in ruins, it commanded the cliff like a wounded queen. Blackened stone walls, smoke-stained windows, and the half-collapsed east wing loomed against the bright blue sky. A city truck was already parked in the gravel drive. A man in a hard hat approached, his clipboard tucked under one arm. "Miss Collins?" he asked. "Yes. I only found out last night." "Frank Delaney," he said, extending a calloused hand. "City structural engineer." Mind if I show you what we're dealing with? Melissa nodded, her throat tight. Together, they walked up the crumbling marble steps. Up close, the damage was even worse. The grand double doors hung askew, the once proud entryway littered with blackened debris. Water pooled across the marble floor, reflecting the soot-smeared ceiling above. We're classifying this as a partial collapse, Frank explained. The eastern third is gone. Central portion is standing but compromised. West wing has smoke and water damage. You're looking at 7 figures just to stabilize, more if you want to restore. Most folks would call this a total loss. Melissa's chest ached as they passed through room after ruined room. The dining hall's chandelier lay in shards, the plaster walls cracked and sagging. In the music room, a charred piano stood like a ghost from another time. "How would anyone?" she whispered, unable to finish. "Fire marshal suspects multiple ignition points," Frank said carefully. "Could be electrical. Could be deliberate. I don't investigate causes, but I'll tell you, 3 different starting points isn't an accident I've seen in 20 years. Before she could reply, something flickered at the edge of her vision. 2 small shapes darting across a doorway. Her heart nearly stopped. Jack, Diana. She hurried through the blackened hallways, fear rising like smoke in her lungs. There, in the cavernous ballroom, stood her twins, faces smudged, guilt written across their wide eyes. "What are you doing here?" Melissa's voice cracked with panic. Jack looked down. "We took the bus." "We wanted to see the castle," Diana whispered. Melissa's anger dissolved into a mix of fear and heartbreak. "This isn't a castle. It's dangerous. It could collapse at any moment." "But," Diana's voice was soft, almost lost in the cavern, "we've never had a house before." The words struck Melissa harder than any wreckage could. She dropped to her knees, pulling them into her arms. Their little bodies clung to her, warm and trembling in the cold ruin. Frank appeared in the doorway, his expression a mix of concern and professional alarm. "This place isn't safe for kids," he said gently. Melissa tightened her hold on them. She knew he was right. But as she looked around at the fractured grandeur of Lake Crest, the broken marble, the scorched beams, the echo of music that once filled these halls, something stirred inside her. Her children saw a home, and that terrified her more than the danger itself. That night, long after she had put the twins to bed, Melissa sat at her small kitchen table again. The hum of the fluorescent light above buzzed faintly, the same sound that had accompanied every late-night bill payment and every exhausted meal she had eaten alone since the divorce. Only tonight, the surface of the table was covered not with overdue notices or insurance forms, but with papers far heavier than anything she had ever held. The envelope from Williams Finch still lay open, its contents spread across the wood, the deed to Lake Crest Manor, trust documents filled with impossible legal language, and Vivian's note written in her unmistakable hand. "Melissa, you listened. In a world full of noise, that's rarer than you know. Lake Crest needs someone who knows how to listen. The house has stories to tell. My children never could. Perhaps you will." Melissa read the words again and again, her fingertips brushing over the faded ink. "Stories to tell," she murmured. "What does that even mean?" The practical side of her, the woman who had survived divorce, who worked double shifts to make sure Jack and Diana had school shoes and warm meals, knew what it meant. A death trap of a mansion. 7-figure restoration costs. A city order looming over her head. She should call the lawyer, decline the inheritance, and move on with her modest but safe life. But another part of her, the part Vivian had spoken to in those late-night hospice hours, couldn't let it go. The actress's voice echoed in her memory. "Don't let people write your ending. Write it yourself." Melissa pushed the legal papers aside and reached for the smaller envelope tucked at the bottom. Its edges were singed, as if it had survived fire itself. Inside was another note, even more cryptic. If you can, give the house its hearing back. The world silenced me once. Don't let them silence what remains. Trust few. Listen always. V. Melissa leaned back in her chair, heart pounding. She had no idea what Vivian meant by hearing, but she knew one thing: this wasn't just about a house. It was about something hidden, something the actress had wanted protected. Her eyes drifted to the bedrooms where her children slept, safe and oblivious. If she said yes to this, she wouldn't just be risking money. She'd be risking their stability, their future. But as her gaze returned to Vivian's note, a strange certainty settled over her. Maybe she couldn't afford to do this. Maybe she wasn't strong enough. Maybe, just maybe, Vivian had seen something in her that she had yet to see in herself. Melissa whispered the words aloud, tasting them like a vow. "I'll listen." 3 days after her first walk through the ruined mansion, Melissa returned to Lake Crest with a heaviness in her chest. The November wind whipped off Millbrook Bay, carrying the tang of salt and the faint, lingering smell of charred wood. She parked her battered Honda at the gate, embarrassed when she noticed the sleek vintage Jaguar coupe already there, gleaming British racing green under the gray sky. A man stood beside it, tall, silver streaks in his dark hair catching the light. Even before he turned, recognition jolted her. Gabriel Reed. The Gabriel Reed. Academy Award winner. Hollywood royalty. His face had aged into fine lines and gravitas, but his presence was undeniable, like someone who belonged in the kind of house now crumbling before them. "You must be Melissa Collins," he said warmly, extending his hand. His voice was familiar, not from the screen, but from the late-night interviews her mother used to watch, where he spoke with the ease of a man who didn't need to prove himself anymore. Melissa shook his hand, self-conscious of the faint paint stain still on her sleeve. Yes. I didn't expect." He smiled, easing her discomfort. "James Williams, Vivian's lawyer, told me you'd be here today. I hope you don't mind the ambush. I needed to see the place." They walked toward the mansion together, passing under the yellow caution tape. Melissa found herself asking the question that had been circling her mind since his arrival. "You knew her?" "She gave me my first real role," Gabriel said, his eyes softening at the memory. "I was 19. Fresh off a bus from Nebraska, starving, broke, ready to quit. Vivian saw something no one else did. She gave me a chance. And when she believed in you, you wanted to live up to it." They stepped inside the blackened entry hall, daylight filtering through the fractured ceiling. Melissa glanced at him, expecting pity or condescension at the wreckage, but instead, Gabriel studied the ruins as if searching for something hidden beneath the ashes. "The fire inspector suspects arson," she offered, watching him carefully. "I'm not surprised," Gabriel murmured. Vivian had a gift for inspiring loyalty and enemies. If someone wanted this house destroyed, it's because of what's inside it. Melissa's heart quickened. The house has stories to tell. Vivian's words whispered in her memory. "You think she left something here?" "I think," Gabriel said slowly, his gaze fixed on the scarred remains of the library, "that Vivian never did anything without purpose. If she gave you this place, Miss Collins, it's because she trusted you to find what others tried to erase." Melissa didn't answer right away. The enormity of it pressed down on her. The fire, the inheritance, the twins, now a famous actor telling her she might be custodian of secrets someone would commit arson to destroy. Yet in Gabriel's calm conviction, she found a strange comfort. For the first time since the envelope had landed in her hands, she felt she wasn't entirely alone. The wind rattled the broken windows, and somewhere deep in the house, a loose beam groaned like an old memory. Melissa swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then I suppose I'll have to listen harder." Gabriel smiled, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. Exactly what Vivian would have wanted.